How is it that everyday people can outsmart AI? It's not about the smartest person in the room. It's about the power of the crowds. It's called hive mind, crowdsourcing. It is something that can make a huge difference. Now, there's pros and cons here to use the crowd, but sometimes the crowd can be a negative thing. But how can you use that social validation? How can you use the wisdom of the crowd to persuade, motivate, and influence? Let's do it.
Maximize your influence. Kurt Mortensen is the author of Persuasion IQ, Laws of Charisma, and the best-selling book, Maximum Influence.
Kurt Mortensen here. Welcome to podcast 588 for Maximize Your Influence. Glad you're here. Glad you're willing to learn the powerful tools of persuasion and influence. It will make a huge difference in your life. Something we should have learned in school. We're going to learn it right now. A different tool every week. Thank you for your love and support. Any comments, feedback? Let me know at maximizeyourinfluence@gmail.com. Things you want to hear, articles you want me to review, whatever it is, let me know. Check out your email for this week's special. If you take your Persuasion IQ, and you can do that at maximizeyourinfluence.com, this week, for the next 7 days, I will give you $50 value, the Millionaire Psychology Program. That's self-persuasion. Pretty simple. You want to be a millionaire or whatever your goal is, you start thinking, acting, and doing what other millionaires do. It's that simple. Based on countless interviews, scientific articles, it'll make a huge difference. Until your software's right upstairs, it's not going to matter. With the other tools you have, mindset's always first, but it's what people work on last. So if you're wondering what's taking so long, work on your mindset. So what is this wisdom of the crowd? Maybe you've heard that term before, collective intelligence, swarm intelligence. Wisdom of the crowd refers to the collective wisdom, opinions, estimates, decision of an independent group or individuals, where it often yields more accurate or better results than a single person or expert or small elite group. Now, this was popularized by James Surowiecki in his book, Wisdom of the Crowd, and they looked at historical observations like Francis Galton. This goes to early 1900s, where he did an experiment at a county fair where he asked the crowd to guess an ox's weight. And he averaged all those together, and they came within 1% of the true value, the collective wisdom of the crowd. So he found that shared knowledge or problem solving within the right group, that's key, that wisdom from the crowd brought better results than asking an expert or a few people. So basically, the collective output from a crowd gives you better results than individual contributions. Again, that crowd's got to be diverse, independent. It has to be people that know what they're talking about when they're making decisions or some type of prediction or some type of innovation. So back then in the 1900s, most people were probably ox experts. They raised ox, they knew ox, they had farm animals. That was the life for a lot of people back then, especially at a county fair. Now, we can use this in persuasion, that social proof, that social validation. We can use them in sales through testimonials, reviews, where the majority of the people love the product, gave it a 5-star review. When something has 5,000 5-star reviews, that's collective wisdom. That's wisdom of the crowd. That makes the decision much, much easier. Now, we know as humans that it's not always 100%, but it's a great shortcut for our brain. Like, if 100 people love this restaurant, it must be a good restaurant. Again, no guarantees, but it sure makes a great shortcut than reading each review, monitoring it. Is that one true? Is that one not true? We just follow the collective wisdom of the crowd. Because when we don't know how to act, we look at other people's behavior. It's usually a safe bet on how to act, what to do, what to buy. So if we can harness these collective insight, this wisdom of the crowd, this crowdsourcing, it can make persuasion, selling, influence much, much easier. Now, the blunder here is the opposite to where we're following the wrong endorsements. I'm pretty sure I've been to restaurants that all the reviews that were 5-star came from moms, dads, aunts, uncles, made up because it wasn't that good. So can you truly verify it came from the crowd? Is there enough there for it to be diverse enough? Was it independent enough? Because when your prospects, your audience discovers that it's all hype, it's not real, that's going to damage your reputation. But we also make the mistake, that blunder of not doing enough research and just following the crowd. Again, it can be a great, fast, easy shortcut, but is that audience diverse enough, independent enough, unbiased enough to give you true feedback about the product or service? So social validation, one of the 12 laws of persuasion and maximum influence, can be influenced by cognitive bias, by other people, by AI now and other internet services that can artificially inflate a lot of these testimonials, a lot of this group feedback, especially in a high-pressure environment. I saw this at a timeshare presentation where they're having people running the back, they're ringing the bell, and you're thinking everybody's doing it, but the reality is very few people are doing it. They're just making a lot of noise. That can be a downside to crowdsourcing or the wisdom of the crowds. And this one's really interesting that I've noticed, that if you're looking at reviews and there's one bad one and 10 good ones, you read the bad one first. That's human nature. That's what we do. But if there's enough good ones to balance them, it makes a big difference. Plus, if there's only all good ones, a lot of us go, wait a minute, something's up. There's got to be somebody that says something negative. Right? Aunt Edna. Doesn't matter what you say, how good the meal is, how good your service is. There are people in the world that are going to say something negative. So having a negative one, as long as you have positive ones to balance it out, is okay. It's actually a good thing for you to do. Because everybody knows you could give a perfect presentation, have a perfect product. Somebody, maybe even your competition, is going to say something negative about it. And here's another challenge, part of the blunder. It's called weird. When you look at a lot of these collegiate studies, they call it weird. And what that stands for is that most people in that study, here's what weird stands for, are Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. Most studies are Western. They're done in North America and Europe. They're done at a college university. They're educated more than the world. Because think about it, less than 10% of the world holds a college degree. Industrialized. Most of the subjects in these studies live in industrialized, technologically advanced places in the world. They're rich. They come from high-income nations, and most of them are democratic. They live in societies with specific political views. So that's not the big part of the world, because those that live in those countries are more individualistic versus a lot of countries are collective. They're more worried about being fair versus being individualistic. So you have this small part of the population, say 10%, that account for 80% of the studies. So is that giving you the right information? So that is your blunder. There can be a negative downside to that. We'll talk about the pros and cons here in a bit. But before we do, let's do the geeky Scarly article. So I had a company ask me for my brag sheet. I don't know if people call that. That's basically all the companies that I've trained for. And I was looking at, especially on the government side, all these acronyms: NASA, FBI, TSA, FDA, CDC, SEC. I've done training for them off and on over the years. And that reminded me of a few studies, and it's called digital amnesia, or the Google effect. Let's back up, do a little history here, and talk about the power of acronyms in persuasion and in memory recall. So in 2010, something really, really good happened and really bad. The really good thing was a smartphone came out in your hand, a library, a camera, a video, a phone, a flashlight, a map. It's incredible. In your back pocket, everything you need, your emails, your texts. Now, the challenge and the bad thing was the smartphone. We're not going to go into the spikes of depression, anxiety, and what happened to the people that grew up with smartphones. That is the negative side. We won't even go into that one, but we're going to go into digital amnesia, again, that Google effect, where people can't remember information anymore. There used to be that day you had to memorize phone number, memorize things. Now it's all on your phone. You don't have to memorize a thing. And so that gives us digital amnesia where we just can't remember things anymore. And the studies do show that excessive screen time disrupts neural connections in the brain, the hippocampus, if you need to know. That's where the key area for memory formation, that all this digital times ruin our ability to memorize, to learn things, and it increases memory decline. So if that's a challenge for you, and I think it's a challenge for all of us, it's because it's just easier. It's in your phone. that you start using more acronyms to remember things. You have NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration. A lot of people don't know SCUBA, self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. So acronyms assist the brain in recalling information by leveraging chunking. That's a cognitive process where you put individual pieces of data into larger, more manageable units. That's how the brain works. It reduces the mental load and makes storage and working memory more efficient. Basically taps into how the brain naturally organizes and retrieves data through associations and patterns. I remember in marketing in college, ADA, attention, interest, desire, and action. I haven't used that in years, but it's still in my brain. So when you're persuading people, if you can give them an acronym, that increases their retention. It helps you too. If you're giving a presentation, put it into an acronym. And goals, people use SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. That chunks information. So a couple things here. This is going to help in your memory retention. You're going to remember things better. It's better for your brain. You're not going to fall into that digital amnesia. But it's also important when you teach others to reinforce learning for others to make you more memorable. So think about using more acronyms for you and in the persuasion process. Use your brain how it's supposed to work, and it'll increase your memory, your recall, and it'll help you be more persuasive with others because they're going to remember what you taught them, what you want them to do. That is your geeky, scarly article. Now let's get into the pros and cons of this wisdom of the crowd. So the con, the negative side, is groupthink. Maybe they're afraid to say something because of the boss, right? The boss always has great ideas, right? When Blockbuster said, no, Netflix isn't going to happen, there's no way. And that cost them their business. Netflix is the big one. Blockbuster doesn't even exist. Kodak, yeah, the digital camera, that's not going to work. They collectively thought not going to do anything about it. Not even going to Enron, right? All those challenges, that group think. So a lot of times in those groups, it's not diverse enough. There's self-censorship, getting afraid to say anything. Right, it's not going to be a big deal if we make a bad decision. Or maybe there's pressure from someone to go along with the group. There's some challenges here because everyone's thinking the same way. The group think it's not that diverse group. So with social validation, you want as diverse as possible for them to buy into it. Now, there's an exception to that to where if you're marketing just to medical doctors or chiropractors or insurance salespeople, then having a lot of testimonials from that industry could be helpful, but you still want it to be diverse within that industry. So what can you do to get away from groupthink? Well, I've always liked to appoint a devil's advocate. It's a specific individual in the group say, all right, everything we say, you say the opposite. You find something why it won't work. People actually love to be assigned this role, gives them permission to contradict what you're saying, and you get past that herd mentality, that groupthink that can be very devastating to a team, to a company. Research shows that it works. If you are running a meeting and someone objects with something, has a different idea, say, thank you for bringing it up. Give people permission to do it. You encourage it. You want it. That gets you past the group think. Another thing you can do if it's a culture that it just doesn't happen that way, people are afraid to speak up, be anonymous. You could have a silent vote. You can send out a poll, a survey. You can talk to people one-on-one. Give them permission to be able to vote their opinion, especially in bigger groups where they think everyone leans this way, but maybe they lean another way. And that's one thing we've been learning lately is just because it's a loud, frequent voice doesn't mean it's a majority voice. And that's something to think about with groupthink. So collect opinions, do it anonymously, do it independently, do it one-on-one, whatever you need to do to get the right information that you need. And that could be true when you're trying to persuade or sell somebody one-on-one. What do you think? What do you really think? What do we need to do here? Because there might be a dominant personality, a boss, a manager, a CEO in the room that kind of sways everything, and they don't have all the answers, but they might think they do. So experiments do show that when you get independent judgments, still from the group, but not as a group, that's important, You're still getting information from the group, and that gives you the information you need. But when it's within the group, that's when the challenges happen. And always make sure to mix it up that there's variety in the group. A lot of times when you have managers choose their own team, they choose everybody that's like them, thinks like them, has their same type of personality. They're easier to get along with. Of course, they're going to choose them. But if you have all analytical people on a team, then you're going to analyze it to death and get nothing done. If you have all amiable, extroverted people on a team, you're going to have a lot of fun and get nothing done. You need that variety, not only in personalities, but in educations and background to get the information that you need. So think about that in a negotiation. Do you have cross-functional participants? Somebody from financing, marketing, maybe a lawyer, maybe a salesperson, a professional negotiator, someone with a lot of experience, somebody experienced in another industry could be very, very helpful. Because the studies show that when you have these homogeneous groups, the groups don't make the best decisions. Especially in today's age with social nepotism, I heard it called, where your social feeds are all fed to you based on your friends, what you want to see, what you want to hear, and you think like the world, but the reality is you might not. What you're getting fed might not be the majority opinion, might not be what the world thinks, but that's what you're getting, and that's what they've called social nepotism, because all your friends agree with you. You've canceled the friends that don't agree with you, so you're just getting the same information all the time. So looking at both sides is very important to make a great decision. When I was working on a graduate degree in business, one of the most powerful things that happened is they had all these controversial topics, and you could pick one, and then you had to take a side. All right, so everyone had their topic, and they chose their side. Everybody made it public, and then the professor says, all right, now write a paper and do a presentation on the opposite side. Wow, what an eye-opener to see, that's why they think that way. That's interesting. Never thought of it that way before. And that's something that's not happening very much in today's age, to really objectively look at both sides. And that's true with any aspect of your life or any decision that needs to be made. So there is that negative side, but then there's the positive side, where when we have the right type of crowd, we get better insights, that collective intelligence. We can solve problems, we can connect the world, we can do a lot of great things. Now, as a persuader, the quickest, bestest, fastest way to implement this wisdom of the crowd is social validation. We're social creatures. We change our opinions and our behaviors based on the people around us. We have this desire to belong, and it's pretty simple. When your product, your service is best-selling, a trend in high demand, the norm, number 1, top 10, fastest growing, most popular, liked by the crowd, favorite of the crowd, number 1 of the crowd, a trend of the crowd. You see where we're going with this? It's easier for them to say yes. And you just know, if the majority of the people, the wisdom of the crowd, likes the product or service, you know with a pretty good chance, again, there's no guarantee that it's going to work for you. A mock political debate, the more people they got to cheer that they put in the audience, the more people liked that candidate. You go into a bookstore, there's the bestseller list, easy shortcut, wisdom of the crowd. So collect more testimonials. You never have enough. Keep collecting those, because that's a whole crowd saying nice things about you. And then final one, the clearer the principle of social validation, the better. Meaning, make it obvious. They can see it's part of a trend. They can see the 5 stars. They can see it's an industry standard. They can see who's using it. That's where you would add the testimonials. So there you have it. That's podcast 588 with Maximize Your Influence. Thanks for being here. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, our weekly email, and on YouTube. Any questions or comments, let me know at maximizeyourinfluence@gmail.com, or go to maximizeyourinfluence.com or hit the link in your email for the special, Taking Your Persuasion IQ, learning the advanced resources to really master the world of persuasion, motivation, and influence. And of course, mindset, that self-persuasion. Take something you learned today, master it, use it, put it in your toolbox, And you'll become more successful, more influential, a better negotiator, I'd say a better person. Hey, and go out and persuade with power.